Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the Foraker Realty Podcast. I just want to first thank everybody for such an overwhelming amount of support. We just started this a little while ago, and it's really starting to take off. I'm going to be interviewing Prince today, a newer agent here at Foraker Realty. So my goal is going to be to try to take some of the things that Prince has used in his career to make him so successful and give them back to the audience. If you guys like the show, my goal is to really try to grow this so we can keep helping people. With that being said, if you could like and share our podcast to someone you know, maybe an agent who could use our support or use this little, couple golden nuggets that we have, I would really appreciate that. So yes, I'm going to interview Prince today. Prince is a newer agent. Some of the awesome things Prince has accomplished is so far this year, we're only in May, he's able to have 12 deals pending and settled. That's our yearly goal for most new agents. So Prince has already done that in just 6 months. So he's doing a great job. Prince is not only doing that, but you're not from around here, right, Prince? So you have no sphere of influence. You came and you basically said, hey, I want to sell a ton of real estate, but I don't have a sphere of influence. I'm working a full-time job.
Yeah.
And, you had all kinds of obstacles, and I'm like, all right, let's do it,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest thing for me was that I always wanted to be in real estate. I just never really knew what my entry point was going to be. A lot of times I would look at things like wholesaling and fixing flips, but like you said, I didn't have the sphere of influence or the network, rather, to do the flips. So I figured if I get in as a realtor, the contacts and the network that I'll develop by being a realtor help me, venture out into some of those other aspects of real estate.
Okay. So let's just start it off. So what were you doing before you joined real estate?
I was a supervisor at a battery manufacturing plant, rather, in Middletown. I've been there for 10 years. So basically, I started from the floor as an operator, and I eventually got promoted to a manager. Kind of just was working my way up the corporate ladder and realized that, that wasn't really my path.
So you were already in pretty much of a leadership role.
Yeah.
And, used to dealing with the different personalities of people and stuff. So yeah. I'm sure that was able to help you a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it helped me develop a little bit more patience, something that I've always struggled with throughout the years. And, my old coworkers will probably tell you different. But I think that has helped me to, be in a better position of managing people. And in this business, you got to manage people, absolutely. So
right.
It's definitely helped out.
Yeah, 100%. So when you came, you wanted to do real estate full time, and that job was probably your first obstacle, right?
Yeah.
And I just remember you want to quit your job. When should I quit? How much should I save? Blah, 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 blah. Until what happened? So why don't you just walk us through that? Walk us through, when did you know when it was a good time to quit? Was it scary? What made you take the jump?
So I will say that I never knew it was a good time to quit, to be honest. I just think that the level of support that I had coming to this brokerage is what gave me, the nudge I needed to do it.
Okay.
Just seeing what was happening with everybody else here. And like I said, just knowing the support that was on hand, I kind of felt like, I wouldn't be alone in this. So it just made sense, especially given the amount of unhappiness I was feeling there. So.
And you had a little bit, this is just from my point of view, you kind of dipped your toes in the water of quitting, right?
Yeah.
And you took maybe a month, I don't know the exact time.
About 2 months, yeah.
About 2 months. And it seemed to me like the second time, because then you went back to work, and walk me through that. So
it was a lot of things going on at work, and I was more so concerned for my mental health. I also wanted to see what it felt like to, be involved in this full time. But primarily, I was concerned for my mental health. So I took the time off. And when I went back, it was like, things were starting to pick up on this side. But I didn't have the flexibility to be able to do what I was doing while I was out for the couple months. So I would get people that would call me while I was at work. They wanted showings, and I just couldn't leave work, and then I couldn't just call out all the time because I'm a manager, you know what I mean? If I'm not at work, then, they don't have anybody to manage the shift. So it was kind of bringing that conflict involved, and I just said, you know what, maybe it's time.
Yeah.
Or maybe I should just try, and, if it doesn't work out, I could always probably be a manager somewhere else. And
you were leaving, you had a good job. You were making good money there, right?
Yeah.
So, and you, a lot of people are listening are probably thinking, well, maybe he didn't have kids or maybe blah, 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 blah. But you do have kids. You left a great job. And, it was a big risk for you, right?
Yeah, huge risk. I have 2 children and I have other things going on in life that job supported. So yeah, it was a huge risk because you come from, 10 years, you have a steady income, you're getting a check every 2 weeks to, if you don't sell a house, you don't have a check, you know what I mean? So it's definitely a different dynamic and definitely a scary one, but you just gotta take a walk of faith. If you have a passion for something and you really want to achieve something, just go for it. You're not going to get out of anything that you don't put into it. So I kept feeling like if I was going to just keep one foot in and one foot out, then that was the results that I was going to get.
100%. Well, I'll give you a lot of credit for doing that. A lot of people don't make that decision, What advice would you give yourself if you could go back?
The advice I would give to myself is do it sooner.
Yeah.
If it's on your mind enough to where it's disturbing, your mental and you're constantly thinking about it, just do it. You only have one life, and that's not to say just be naive or just jump out on a limb without giving things some thought, but you miss every opportunity you don't take. The longer you wait, the longer it could take for you to progress. So if you just jump out there, you never know how it's going to turn out. But 100%. The advice I would give to someone else is you got to do what's best for you. At the end of the day, my story is not going to necessarily be your story. And I even had to tell myself this, even comparing myself to some agents here, I had to realize that you guys' success is not going to be the same as my success. It's going to look different. My walk, my journey is going to look totally different from anybody else's. And now, especially in a dark place when I first started here, just because things were moving slow, I wasn't getting any deals under contract. And I kind of felt like I was the only one here not progressing. So, I had to have those talks with myself in order to keep going.
Yeah, I want to touch on that later. I think that's great advice. Do it sooner. Was there anything you said once I save up a certain amount of money? Because that's what agents always ask me. What do you recommend for somebody that wants to leave? A certain amount of money, a certain amount of deals in the pipeline. And one of the things, maybe this was just in my head, but it seemed to me like the second time when you fully left, you were almost like a different agent. You know what I mean? Like you burned the boat, there was no going back.
Right.
And it was like, all right, it's working now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Totally. So I think once I left, everything started to come to light. Like I said, I prayed. I did a lot of things contemplating this. So I feel like everything started to come full circle. And I still feel like, I got a long way to go. So I don't want to sit here like, I'm the blueprint to success or that I'm the greatest that's doing it. And you don't have to be the greatest. You just have to get started.
Right.
And whatever that looks like for anybody, just keep going. And eventually, whatever you put into it, you'll get back.
100%. I mean, for those of you that are listening, if you're thinking about leaving your full-time job, I know I had those same conversations with myself. Prince has had them. I've had them with a ton of agents at this company, a ton of agents in the business. The thing to remember, I think, is that you're in control of what happens.
Right.
It's not, me, Prince, Sabri, there's a lot of people that I've had this conversation with and they have been very successful. It's not the decisions you make before you quit. It's the decisions you make after you quit, because the next day you don't have anybody calling you. You got to show up for yourself,
Yeah.
I think that's the part, if you can do that, then I think you should just make the move.
100%. And also just kind of making sure you surround yourself with people who genuinely care about your success, right? So I can't stress it enough. I don't think I would have quit my job as soon as I did if I wasn't at this brokerage with, the environment that I'm in, and the agents that I'm around. Because in a lot of ways, you have some people who've been doing it for some time, but it's like we're all growing together. I mean, even you're growing the company and things of that nature. So we're all kind of growing together and it keeps that level of humility there. So, if you call someone with a problem or you have a question, nobody's kind of shrugging you off or not making time to help you out. So I think that's clutch. And for anybody that's just getting started, to surround themselves with, a team of agents that really care about their success, and, that'll help them get far.
That's awesome. I appreciate that big time. That's part of my mission here. And, it's good to hear that. When you're talking about that and, we're talking to an agent out there, let's say in the middle of Florida, right? And we're telling the new agent, hey, if you want to leave your job, find a brokerage with this culture, or maybe even there's a leader out there who wants to figure out how to bring that culture to their company. Do you think there's a way to measure that or something they can look for?
I mean, one way is just conversation, just kind of filling people out. In this business, you got to have some level of knowing how to read people.
Right.
I mean, that's really, how you're going to get successful at determining what their needs are and figuring out how to get them to the closing table eventually. So I think, just having the conversations with the people on the team and just seeing where they are and where they're headed, the message that they're delivering, and then kind of gauging it from there. Of course, you don't want to just jump on the first thing. You want to kind of compare brokerages and cultures and stuff like that. But I think, like, for me, and this might be unique, is, I was blessed to have gain a brother in the beginning of this from the very start. So, my teammate that brought me here has been, pivotal in helping me, along the way. So I think that I'm hoping that, in turn, I could be that vessel for someone else. And that's really what it's all about. And I'm sure there's someone at every brokerage that's like that cares about who they bring on and want to help them succeed. So it's just about a matter of finding that person or finding that environment.
Yeah, 100%. That's one of the things you guys always stress to me. You're like, hey, I know you want to grow the company, but are you focused on keeping that close-knit environment, and the culture? It's huge for me to hear that when there's other people out there like, hey, I just put it all on the line for this place. Like I just left my full-time job. So
but they also can't put it all on the place. You have to, so it's a 50-50 thing. 50% of it is that, but then the other 50% of it is you showing up, you doing the work, you making the calls, you sending the emails or the follow-ups and all of those things. Because nobody has to reinvent the wheel. The system is in place. It's just a matter of figuring out how to implement it in your daily process.
100%. And I think part of the biggest struggle for me when helping you was, I'm not going to say you were like a perfect person doing it every single day, all day, but you were doing 90% of the stuff that we were saying to do, and the results weren't coming. So, but I've seen it 100 times where, like, just keep going. If most people, there's that phase where it's like you're beating a brick wall, nothing's happening, and then finally it all comes through at once, right?
Yeah.
We've had those conversations. I know, Sabri's a great leader. He's probably had those conversations with you a bunch of times.
Right.
I guess let me form my question. There's a weird period where you come in and you're doing every single thing by the book, and there's no results, right? How long do you think that was? 3 months?
If you think about when I first came to this brokerage in August of 2023, it's been more than 3 months. It's probably been a good 4 or 5 months, honestly. And it did it got tough, you know what I mean? But at the same time, like you said, I was working a full-time job. And outside of me having the 2 months off, really, I didn't really have it full-fledged. So, I had to give myself some grace. And one of the things that I've always kept with me was whenever I would talk to you, it was never like, bro, you got to sell, you got to sell, you got to sell. It's just like, just keep going. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. So it kind of took some of the pressure, outside of me putting pressure on myself, there was no pressure here. It was just like, just keep doing the work. It's going to come. And, that's big in itself, because you might be in an environment where your managing broker is probably just like, hey, you're not doing no deals. What's wrong? What are you, you know what I mean? Kind of making you feel like you're failing. And, you never made me feel like I was failing. It was always like, hey, you're doing the right things. Just keep going.
Right.
So that's big. It's encouraging. It's motivation. And I'm a firm believer, especially coming from being a manager, if you just figure out how to keep people motivated, they'll do the work.
Right.
You don't really have to force them to work.
100%. That's great. And then it all hit, and it was frustrating for you, but it was frustrating for me to watch it too, because I'm like, I'm looking at the call logs and I'm like, man, Prince is calling more than everybody. Man, and it wasn't coming in, but that's how it is. And I hope everybody listening out there, as soon as you're ready to give up, you push another couple weeks and boom. Truth be told, we're all very blessed that happens, because so many people give up in that spot, and okay, that's fine. Me and you will sit here and clean up their deals. Like, that's fine. Quit, leave, but
I think it also keeps me grounded, you know what I mean? Because when you get that instant success, it's like a smoke and mirror. You kind of think it's easy, and it's not. So you might find yourself getting relaxed when, this is a compounding thing. You got to keep going. So even when you start to see things hit and it's looking successful, if you're not keeping your pipeline full and constantly calling and doing the same things, eventually all of those will go under contract, and then now you're sitting dry trying to get the next person on the phone. So
that was going to be my next conversation to you was, great, you've got all these deals under contract now. It's like the first level is just not giving up, showing up, doing it, not giving up. The second level is just being like disciplined and making your calls, doing your prospecting every single day. Then the deals come. And that's when it's like you need to be another level of discipline. and professional, because before the money was a motivator. Now that money motivation's out the window, unless you have a really big why, right?
Yeah.
But keeping that's like the third level in my head mentally. It's like, all right, now I got to try to keep you in like a hungry position and to keep hustling kind of like you were when you first quit your job. You know what I mean? If you can stay there, that's when you're going to be, an elite agent, right?
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I think that more importantly too, you gotta have more of a reason than the money when you get in a business like this, because sometimes the money's just not gonna come. So what's gonna keep you going? For me, like you said, I walked away from a good paying job. So it was never really about the money. It was just about finding a purpose and doing something with my life that feels fulfilling. So, I mean, my advice to anybody else that's thinking about doing this is definitely have more of a why than just the money, because if you don't, when that money's not coming, 9 times out of 10, you'll probably walk away right before it actually starts to come together for you. You know what I mean?
That's such good advice, man. The money, it's like, I think they call it diminishing marginal returns or something. Once you make, $60,000 or $100,000, the difference between $100,000 and $200,000, it doesn't do that much for your quality of life. It's like when you can't drive because you can't afford a car, like the gap between not having a car and having a $600 car.
Yeah.
Now you can get anywhere in the country. Like now that you got that $600 car,
Right.
Like that's such a big come up.
Yeah.
The difference between a $600 car and an $80,000 car, it's got more cup holders and it's got leather interior, but it's not going to motivate you every single day. Right. It'll motivate you a couple days a week when you're, the sun's out and the right song's on and you're ready to make some calls, but 100%, you need a bigger why.
Yeah, I mean, what's going to happen if you make 100,000 or 150,000 doing some of the rush jobs and just trying to get people closed or get a house sold, and then you got bad reviews, and then next year you can't make no money because nobody wants to work with you. You know what I mean? So like, my biggest thing was just making sure that the people that I am working with understand that I'm completely on their side, and it's more about making sure that they're satisfied with the entire process. And you can't please everybody. So, it's going to be some people that you're going to make upset or going to be upset for you and you might not understand. But ultimately, if you're trying to help people achieve something great, that's got to be the bottom line. You know what I mean? The money will come. You know what I mean? As long as you're doing something that you're passionate about, the money is going to come.
It's got to be bigger than you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And to go back to what you were talking about before, about that time when you're doing all that work, I think the key is you got to measure the inputs. Measuring by the contracts is measuring the outputs. You know what I mean? You got to measure the input. And I think that's really the only, of course you need to make sure you're doing the right inputs. But in the beginning, just measure the inputs. I call it every day. Okay, well, that's a win.
Yeah.
Did you sell a house every day? Well, you can't control that, but you can control your calls every day.
Right.
But let me get back. I haven't even asked one question that's been on this page yet. So, all right, let's run through. So, early struggles and resilience. So, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced as a newer agent?
The biggest challenge for me was getting myself out there. Because again, like you said in the beginning, I didn't have much of a sphere of influence. I mean, my sphere was literally at the job I was working at. I've been there the last 10 years. That's where I knew the most people. So outside of that, it's like getting in front of people. So the lead gen program that you have here has definitely helped out with that, because it's allowed me to have a platform to just reach people that I otherwise wouldn't be able to reach. So that was the biggest challenge, just kind of getting out there, and then also, being confident to get in front of the camera and do reels and things of that nature, because that's another part of it. You got to market yourself. You got to put yourself out there, and it's not always comfortable. So for me, it was a complete change, getting on social media, putting things out there. I wasn't doing things like that before.
So you weren't comfortable doing the videos and stuff in the beginning?
No, not at all. Not at all.
That's so funny.
I was always thinking about how I would, appear to somebody else, or if, I would look like I don't know what I'm talking about, or just, me being new, people would just rule me off like, yeah, he don't know what he's doing, so we're just going to bypass him. There's 100 agents out there. Why are we going to pick him?
Wow.
So,
that's a lot of negative self-talk,
Yeah, and I had to overcome that. So.
Basically, to summarize, go somewhere that's got a bunch of leads for you, or you're going to have to buy leads if you don't have a sphere of influence.
Right.
If you've got a good sphere of influence, the videos and social media should get you a good bump. It's very hard to scale a sphere of influence business because it's hard to go meet 5 people tomorrow. You know, very easy to write a bigger check if you know that process is working with leads.
Yeah.
So what he's referring to is we're doing Facebook and we're doing realtor.com leads. So and OpCity through realtor.com. I think the other important thing that we try to build here is like no one here wants to do videos, but we've got that culture where if I'm doing them, you're going to do them. And if, you know what I mean? Like I remember I always joke around like Sabri, I thought he was like the king of video, you know? And then like, I'm telling Kate, like, oh, like, come on, like, we got to bring the heat today. Like, so when Sabri joined, like, he's going to do awesome videos, this, that, and the other. And he goes up and he, like, misses the whole script. And I'm like, and then he goes again. And he's like, man, I got to figure this out. And I'm like, wait, you're not like, you know, I thought he was going to walk in like some, like, actor. But everybody messes up.
Yeah, and it just shows you, you know, it's humility in it. You just got to, you know, just keep trying. You know what I mean? You're not going to get it perfect. And the outtakes will show that. But once it all comes together, you know, you might be looking at it like, oh, I didn't do good. And then someone else watches the video and say, man, I saw your video and it's awesome. And I get that a lot. So even sometimes when I think the video is not that great, someone else comes and lets me know, hey, I really like what you did with that video.
That's
or
awesome.
You look like you've been doing it for forever. And, you know, that's added reassurance and it helps.
There are agents who have been in this business for 20 years, selling houses for 20 years with a book of business that if you ask another agent, they would probably have more recognition of your name just because of the amount of videos that you're putting out. You know, this girl I was just interviewing today, she said she knew of you and Sabri on Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was trying to sell our videos to Recruiter.
Okay.
And I was like, follow Sabri, follow Prince. And she's like, I already follow them.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's funny.
Great.
You never know who's watching, you know?
Yeah.
And you inspire people too. I mean, not you specifically, but anybody. Nobody's comfortable doing a video. And when people see you doing it and stuff, they're like, man, let me go out and do it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we have a duty to do that for others. I mean, like I said, it was done for me. I get inspired by you guys. I get inspired by Sabri. I get inspired by Paige and Jason and everybody else that's on board. So, you know, I have a duty to do that for other people as well and just kind of keep it going.
100%. Yeah, that's awesome. So that brings me on to the next question. What kept you motivated during your hard times in the beginning?
Just the fact that nothing has ever really come for me easy was one thing. So, you know, and also kind of having that mentality like nothing worth having is going to come easy anyway. So, you know, like I said, if I had gotten that instant success as soon as I joined, I'm doing 4 or 5 deals and it's just flowing. When it slowed down, I might have not knew what to do or how to pivot. But I think that compounding success was keeping me motivated because it's like, okay, now this is not easy, but it's worth it. You know what I mean? So, you know, I just got to just keep on following the systems and keep beating the phones up, keep talking to people, keep doing the videos. And also having, you know, accountability partner is good too. Because if you have someone that you're going back and forth with, you have a good flow with, and y'all holding each other accountable, that helps too. It's a family thing. It's a team effort. You know, nobody is successful on their own. You know, it's always about the team, and sometimes it's people that's in the background that you don't even see, but their little input or their little bit of help thrives and pushes you. So, you know, it's definitely a collective thing, I feel. You know, I don't think anybody can be successful on their own, and if they think they are, then, hey, more power to them.
Right.
But I'd rather do it with the team.
Yeah. And there's 2 sides there too, because you're helping them. You know what I mean? So
exactly. I get told that all the time. When me and Sabri have talks, he always tells me, hey, man, you're doing the same for me as I'm doing for you. And I would never think it because you know, he's at a different level than I am. Yeah. But you just never really know who you're inspiring and who you're keeping motivated. You know what I mean? Because it gets tiring. And sometimes you got to figure out that nudge or that push or what's going to keep you going. And it definitely having a good team that you're holding you accountable is going to get you there.
Yeah. I mean, imagine the people watching this that are inspired, you know, a new agent. If you give up in 6 months, they're like, man, that guy gave up. You know what I mean? Like it kind of, it's a trickle effect, right? So that's kind of, when you talk about making it bigger than yourself, I mean, I look at it, I'm like, you know, imagine if I gave up, like, what does that mean for somebody who's looking up to me? Yeah. It's definitely, you know, leadership all around. So, do you have any routines? I know, you know, we all do our workout accountability every day. Is that part of your morning routine?
Yeah, it has become a part of my routine in the past couple of months. I go to the gym faithfully. And, the crazy part about that is when I was working, I wanted to go to the gym, but I just couldn't get started. And then once I got into this business, I was able to figure out my way. And of course, my partner helped me with that as well. But it's just getting started, you know what I'm saying? And once you get it going, it becomes routine. Now it's a part of your daily life. It's implemented. So, it's kind of hard to stray away from it. It's like you wake up and if you don't go, you're like, dang, I missed the gym. I got to figure it out.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So if you apply that to everything you do, same thing with the calling, same thing with the emails or whatever it is you do to acquire business, to prospecting, whatever it is, you'll start to feel like, man, I didn't get this done today. I have to do this. And, it's going to become a part of your life.
So. Yeah. You got to have that routine. Man, the first time I worked out with Sabri, I couldn't walk for 3 days. I was walking around the office like, man, I got to take Advil.
Yeah.
Like I went from just being so out of shape, and then I was like, oh, let me go work out with Paige.
Yeah.
Oh, man, she's almost worse. With that high-low class that they have going on.
I
was
had
like
the same feeling, man. I tried to walk up my steps. I was looking like I was 67, bro. It was terrible. You know what I mean? But now, looking back at that and looking at me now, I'm able to do twice of what I was able to do back then. So it's definitely compounded. And then if you correlate that to what you're doing in the business, it's the same thing. You know what I mean? Looking back when I only had one deal under contract and nothing else, and then now it's starting to come together. It's like, you just got to keep going. You have to keep it implemented in your life.
100%. And just keep setting the bar higher, like you guys pushing, it's like, man, your team's going, I need to step my game up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it just goes and goes. And, that's great.
That's good. That's good when you have that environment amongst everybody where we're not really so necessarily competitive, but we're taking account of each other and using it as fuel. You know what I'm saying? That's good spirit to me, and that's what I love about being here at Foraker.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. I put a lot of time into recruiting people. It's like one person could mess that whole vibe up. You know? And I think, if you're a leader out there listening to this, it's easy to just continue to hire people, but you do have to put, I learned you have to put standards on it because it can be cancerous to the workplace,
right?
For sure. Do you have any tips for managing your time, energy, trying not to burn out?
So I would say, as far as burnout, I don't think I've reached the level in my success to kind of feel what a burnout is like. I'm at the point where like I'm hungry, so I'll just take anything on. So it hasn't really felt like a burnout. So as far as advice for that, I can't say. I would just say figure out a way to manage your day as best as possible. If that looks like, following a schedule and putting everything on a calendar, that helps you, lay it out in front of you so that you could just follow a process. Do it. But you just got to find what works for you. That's the
100%.
biggest thing I think that people fail to realize is that what you do is probably not going to work for me and vice versa. So if I don't figure out what works for me, I'm not going to have that success. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think comparing yourself to yourself versus comparing yourself, like you were in the business for 3 months, comparing yourself to me, who's been in the business for 8 years, 7 years, and I'm like, Brent, what are you doing? Like, of course you're not going to sell more houses than me. No offense, but like,
Yeah, that's just how bad I wanted it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was never really. It was kind of like a comparison. It wasn't good.
Well, listen, I do the same thing. I'll never forget when I sold my first house, and at the old company I was at, they would write your name and the deal on the whiteboard, right? Mm-hmm. So I was always like, I got to get on the whiteboard, right? Yeah. So I finally sold my first house. I go to look at the whiteboard, and there's my name.
Yeah.
Well, there's another guy whose name is on there 19 times. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, well, man, I enjoyed it like the whole walk here, and like I enjoyed looking for my name. And then once I like zoomed back out and looked at the whole whiteboard, I was instantly like, I need another one.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that because I had that same moment coming here one day. I think I had 2 under contract 1 month. And I'm like, I'm doing good. And then I come here and somebody's got like 8 on there. And I'm like, I wanted to just, slowly walk out the door and close it.
I think you need that though.
Yeah, but I mean, that just goes to show you that no matter where we at in life, we all have the same feelings, just in our own way. And that's why I say, like, for me, a rapper by the name of Nipsey Hussle said something similar. It's like, I'm no different than anybody else. It's just I'm going through all the emotions of this business, and I just didn't give up.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So that's just the key. It's like even when it seems rough, if you really want it, just don't give up. Eventually, it's going to reward you.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't think you've been in for a full year yet, right?
No.
So there's a lot of ups and downs coming your way. Of course, we'll be behind you the whole time, but what are your thoughts on just staying consistent, keeping going with the same level of motivation you have now?
It all goes back to the why, right? Like if your why is solid, then that's what's going to keep you motivated and keep going. Not only did I want to help other people, but I also wanted to be a better example for my children. And even that's like being hard on myself, because I've always been told that I'm a great father. But, when you got to sit down and you got to motivate your kids to be the best that they can be, you got to kind of have some type of experience there. You know what I mean? So if you just settle in your own life, how can you really advocate for them not to settle? You know what I mean? And I thought that was important for me jumping into this business, because this is something that I had dreams about and I want them to follow their dreams. So, I have to follow mine as well. And it's never too late.
Yeah.
It's never too late. As long as you got, life and you got will, you'll find a way to make it work.
Keep that why going, We talked about it our last, maybe it was two trainings ago, when we were talking about building our calendar. Just having it right in front of you, instead of writing prospecting from 10 to 11, could you write retiring my parents, building wealth, generational wealth, something just to keep that why right in front of you.
Yeah.
But that's it, man. It's just those little things, you're doing right now. You could just keep doing that. Prospect every day, go on appointments, negotiate contracts, leverage out the small stuff.
Yeah, it could even be something as small as buying a whiteboard, putting it on your wall, and just writing down what you want to accomplish the day before for the next day, and just following through. I got a whiteboard for the new year and wrote out my goals for the year, and I put it on my wall and I looked at it, and then, now you got to kind of adapt and follow the steps to get to those goals and kind of just track it and take accountability if you didn't do what you needed to do that day. And I also had a planner that I got, and I write down in my planner what I'm supposed to do for the day, and just try to follow that schedule. And of course, in this business, it's flexible, so you might not be able to follow everything down to the T, and that's okay. You just gotta know how to pivot and get back on track.
Right. One of the things I would recommend doing, and someone told me this a long time ago, is I write down my goals for the day, the quarter, the year, and then 5-year goal. Every morning I wrote it down. One of the things that was crazy, when you're writing it down in the day, it doesn't really make a difference, but you're bringing your 5-year goal through, to where, I went from being in your shoes and having a goal of own my own brokerage, so that became my 1-year goal, to then watching it go to now it's on the side of like, what's today's thing? File for my E&O insurance. You know what I mean? Like my today's biggest thing. So it's really cool to watch. You got to have it in front of your face all the time now.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of speaking into existence. You kind of just writing it into existence.
Right.
Know what I mean? But again, nothing works if you don't work.
Yeah.
So you got to put in the effort.
I got to get back on that. I've stopped because I started trying to beat people to the gym, and now I'm waking up at 4:30 in the morning, like stumbling out of the door.
Yeah.
And I've lost track of doing my journal, but that was very important for me with opening my brokerage, and definitely just keeping that in front of your face. So let's keep moving on. Let's talk about when you were picking a brokerage. Again, we touched on this in the beginning. What were some of the qualities you were looking for in a brokerage, or maybe the leadership role? I know you had a referral and you were following a lot of what Sabri was doing before you joined, but anything other than that, qualities you would recommend a new agent looks for in a brokerage?
You want to look for if they have continuous training processes, accountability calls, because you want, sometimes it's hard to stay on track of things, especially when you're new, because you don't really know, right? You don't really know what to look for or what to do. And if you don't have anyone staying on top of these things, you kind of could get lost. So I think that's important, just seeing where the brokerage is as far as like their programs and, their trainings and things of that nature, and find out if they're investing in programs that will help you succeed, then you can be successful. A lot of times you might have to find yourself investing in those things yourself, and that could be hard when you're starting out, because if you ain't making no money, how you gonna invest anything?
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think that's important. But again, like I said, I connected with Sabri through a mutual friend that I work with, and I took a liking to him instantly, and I think it was mutual. So when he brought me here, I know he was guiding me somewhere that was beneficial for me. If he was here for a reason, I know it's probably a good reason for me to be here too.
That's awesome. Yeah, Sabri's got a great story, similar to yours about leaving full time. He's a great agent, and he's another person that has amazing discipline. So
discipline is key.
Yeah.
Especially in a business like this.
Yeah, and I think like you said, it's culture too. Like when we met, I'm like, I'm all in on you.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you always seem like an easygoing person, and it's like it's funny because sometimes I'll call Sabri and like I'll be panicking about something, and I'll be like, I call Brian, he's just like, don't worry about it, man, it's gonna be all right, and I'm just like, what? I'm like, this dude is never worried about anything, but I look at that as a place that I want to get to in life. You know what I mean? So to where I know that it's just gonna work out. I just have to do my part. You know what I mean? And that's just kind of how life works. You can't control everything. You only can focus on what you can control and then let everything else play out the way it's supposed to.
It takes a while to get to that point, but eventually you're like, if a deal falls apart and then 20 minutes later you have a deal fall apart and the person's already moved out of their house and the house they're moving into is in Florida and they can't buy that one because this one fell apart and they got to move back in. It's like, the first one's not really that big of a deal to you anymore, right?
Yeah.
It's a big deal to them, but there's only so much you can do. You got to help this person. You got to help, you know what I mean? So it's like, eventually you realize, I think a lot of money is made in real estate. I guess I'll rephrase it to where if you take all the emotion out of it, so if it's good or bad, like a lot of people, I see a lot of people down in the dumps. I've lost 5 deals or 6 deals in a week before when I had no money,
Yeah.
And it's like, that sucks, right?
Yeah.
And it sucks because there's people counting on you.
Exactly.
Like it sucks when that happens and you've got 5 employees and mortgages and this, that, and the other. It's like that deal's not so much of a big deal. But I think people will get down in the dumps and give up there. But people also give up when they're killing it. Like a lot of people will sell 5 houses and just stop working. It's like you can't celebrate when you do good, and you can't you can't get upset when you do bad. It's just taking all that emotion out of it. And it's funny to see when people who haven't experienced so much of it get so bent out of shape about a little, I can't get this pre-approval. And I'm like, it's okay. You know? Like, who cares?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, the more you go through it and the more people you deal with and you experience it, it'll kind of get to that point where you're just like, all right, it's just business as usual. You just got to just keep, going and pivot whatever the situation is. But in the beginning, it can feel like a disaster. I know it's felt like a disaster for me plenty of times. Remember, my first deal I ever got under contract fell through. And I was just like, is this for me? Am I supposed to be doing this? But, again, I did all that I could do on my end.
Right.
And that was enough. Or, just to let me know, you're not doing anything wrong. And I had my teammates to, reaffirm that for me. So you're not doing anything wrong. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah. Because it wasn't only that. It was that deal fell apart. The next offer doesn't get accepted. Your next offer didn't get accepted.
Well, those people, that particular couple that I was helping at the time, they gave up after that. You know what I mean? It was like the one shot, we put it in, it fell through, and then it was like, we're just going to do this and forget about that for right now. And then I had to question myself and say, am I a failure? Like, is this for me? And, you got to get those thoughts out of your head because those negative thoughts can transcend into your life in this business. And, it'll never come together if you keep thinking it won't. So I had to really, fix my mentality in that regard and believe that if I just keep working, something's going to come through.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that was tough. You were one of the people that I was like, man, he's having a bad run. I was like, he's having a bad run. And it was so frustrating for me because you were doing all the right stuff. And I'm like, well, are you calling? And you're like, yeah, like you called more than everybody. And I'm like, okay. Well, just keep going,
Yeah, I think it builds character too, you know what I mean? Because you can't have success without failure, and that's what a lot of people don't realize. And that's why I said, like, if you have that instant success in the beginning, things are coming together, people are calling you to list their house, you get a couple under contract on the buy side, and then it gets slow. Now you kind of get down in the dumps, like you don't really know what to do. So, you got to fail in order to succeed. And I'm glad that, I started out failing. Because that only makes, when it's successful, that much more greater for me.
And think about how awesome it is that, like, luck isn't a part of real estate like that, and failure's an option in real estate and all of that. Because, I mean, could you imagine if everybody that got their license just was successful?
Yeah.
That would be horrible for us, Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm more happy that failure's a thing. And it doesn't, for those of you that are listening, the only thing you really have to do in real estate is just be consistent. Like, you don't come from a sales background where you can convince anybody to buy a house. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just be disciplined, be consistent, be resilient, do it every day, and then do it again, you know?
Yeah, and just realizing that, you're a vessel for a lot of people who otherwise wouldn't even believe that they could own a home.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? So it's just all motivation, and it'll keep you going if you really believe in the cause.
I also think it's important, and I'm not just talking about myself, I just think it's important to be somewhere where the leader is still producing, right? Yeah. Because it took me so long to learn, and I was talking about this with somebody this morning, just learning, hey, when you call your sphere of influence, look at it like you're calling to help them, because there could be another agent that's going to rip them off. Call to offer help. Don't call to ask for commission. Like, I felt so uncomfortable calling my sphere of influence for the first 2 years. Mm-hmm. And just sharing that little sentence from someone who's in that role versus another type of person who maybe they haven't sold in 20 years, right? Yeah. And they're like, did you call your sphere of influence? It's like, you can say more than that sentence. You know what I mean? Right. Like, tell me something else. I called them all. It's 9:30 in the morning. Now what?
And also, I mean, as any industry, real estate is forever evolving. So, like you said, if you don't have a leader that's still producing, how can they help you adapt to what's going on today if they're not even in it? You know what I mean? So that's definitely important.
Yeah. And I'm in the same boat. Like, we're involved in the Tom Ferry organization. We're involved in, other coaching programs. And every week I'm like, who's producing at a high level? What can I learn from them? What type of shoes do you wear? Like, everything, you know? And I think you got to be around that all the time. Yeah. If it's not your brokerage you're going to, you need to find some way to have that in your circle. Okay, I think we've talked enough about the brokerage. Let's do this one. What are your goals for the rest of the year and beyond?
So last year when we were talking about our 2024 goals, I set a goal of doing 25 deals for the whole year. So I'm still kind of firm on that goal, but I would like to, of course, do more if I can. Mainly just staying motivated and staying focused on the business. And like you said, not taking my foot off the gas because I'm having a great month right now or maybe a great month next month. Just trying to keep it consistent and keep it going. So my biggest goal is just to stay the way I was when I first got in this business. Mm-hmm. That's a huge goal for me because, like you said, you can get to a point where you're just not working anymore. And that's not where I want to be.
Yeah. What are your biggest sources of business right now?
Realtor.com leads.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the lead gen program is definitely my biggest source of business. Yeah. I have to be frank about that. You know what I mean? Everything that I'm doing, I'm in Lofty, I'm calling all the leads, you know what I'm saying? So that's definitely my biggest source of business. Okay. Every now and then I get a referral. You might throw me a personal lead or Sabri throws me some, but it's mostly Realtor.com. So, if you're a newer agent and you go somewhere that has these programs available to you, you can thrive. You just got to follow the systems that they have in place. And I think a lot of people don't really do the work. You know what I mean? So if you're not successful, there's no way you could be doing the work. And it might take a while, but if you're just not successful at all, you're not doing the work.
You can't do it for a week. You got to do it for, I mean, you've been doing it for 6 months. Yeah. And it's just finally paying off. There's a lot of people listening to this that say, well, I don't want to call the leads. They're not serious. They're not really pre-approved. They're not going to buy. What do you say about that?
So I'd say just keep calling another one and another one and another one. I mean, you can't really force anybody to buy a house, right? Right. But if you just focus on that one person who doesn't want to do anything, then you're not going to do anything. Yeah. So you got to just keep on going. I mean, even I have advice like that from you or Sabri or anybody, just keep calling, call another one. It's compounded because that person might not be ready to buy a house today, but 6 months to a year from now, they may be calling you like, hey, I'm ready to go. Right. So, you just got to just have that faith and, stay connected with the ones that you touch, but work on touching more down the line.
Yeah, 100%. You have any questions for me that you think people might think is important? Anything, any good advice that?
So when you go out to, these summits and these things across the country, what's going on in your head? Like what's your thriving factor to spend the money, to do all these things? Because I know it's costly, and I know you want to grow the business, but on a grand scheme of things, like what's going on through your head, and why do you go out your way to do these things when you're successful and you could just kind of just blow yourself up to being the man?
Yeah. Mainly it's like this. Like imagine I placed you in Texas, right? And said, hey, you got to get home.
Yeah.
There's no map. You got nothing. Okay. Like you would probably figure it out. You would be able to get here. Like it's not a big deal. You would take this highway, then you might have to turn around, and then you might realize you went too far without getting gas first, right? Or you could just talk to somebody that does it every day, and they're like, hey, get off at this exit. There's always traffic there. You want to get gas before here because there's not another station there. If you want to stop, this is the best hotel.
Yeah.
So you could, instead of taking 2 weeks to get home, you could probably get home in the next day and a half and have a really luxurious ride.
Right.
So that's the best acronym I can think of, because I want to talk to people. Like, I already know what everyone in our area is doing. I'm obsessed about it. But I want to know the same person in my shoes in California, in Texas, wherever, like, what are they doing to grow their business? So really, it's all the agents that go there. So it's the networking and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's a couple. And then I can take that back and bring it to you and say, hey, Prince, Realtor.com leads are beat. We're going to go to Zillow, for example. And I don't know, but I'm just saying if there's something I learned there. So the first thing is the connections you make, the stuff that you're going to learn. This is before we even talk about going into the events. Like when you're in the events, they're very good speakers from all, around the world. But the people you meet there are all in your same shoes. And that's the first thing. The second thing is like, they'll refer you business. So I want them to like, oh, when I meet someone in Florida who wants to buy a house, like I can call this guy. When he meets someone in Delaware, they'll call me.
Right.
So the costs are usually paid for based off of the referral business. But I learned little tiny nuggets like, hey, bring your assistant on your coaching calls. Like that was huge for changing my business. Or use this software or this app. So it's just like a podcast or anything. It's just taking kind of a shortcut on the learning curve.
Okay. Yeah, and that's what I appreciate the most here. Just the way you're willing to try stuff to help us all grow. You know what I mean? It's not just about your own growth. It's about all of our growth. And that's huge. Like I said, you got to have that culture at wherever you decide to join. Because if you don't, you're kind of going to just be on your own.
Right. I appreciate that. So. Yeah, I appreciate that big time. Most people in my position could make more money just getting listings, and working them. But that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. And it's like, what's your purpose? I really want to help the agent that was in my shoes. Like day one, you walk in and you're like, all right, I'm all dressed up. What do I do?
Yeah.
I'm all dressed up and ready to work for the day. Like, what do I do? So I'm really, really focused on building that environment for agents. So, and I think you, Sabri, I could name them all. The system's working. A lot of people that are doing it, that's working. I think that's pretty much it. Any other questions you have? Anything else you think we should talk about?
I think we pretty much covered it all. Like I said, as a newer agent, I mean, everybody has a story, but I'm still in the process of, figuring this out. So, as I'm going along, I hope, I could come back here in a year or two.
Oh, that's what I was going to say.
And have much more to tell, you know what I mean? But for right now, I'm just kind of getting through that new agent blues or whatever the case may be. And I'm just sticking with it. I'm not going to give up on anything. And again, I have people who believe in me here. So, that's important to me too, just not letting my team down. You don't want to have someone invest so much into your success and you just like, that's not good. That's not good relationship building. It's not good for anything. You know what I mean? And that kind of attitude will transcend into everything that you do. And I mean, especially if you're not passionate about it. So, I'm just trying to get through the new agent blues and just keep going.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Hopefully, like I said, I could be a vessel for someone else when they come here. Maybe I could take them on under my wing and help them thrive and push them, you know what I'm saying, and just kind of build that relationship and keep it going.
What's the biggest obstacle you're facing in your business right now?
I would say just kind of connecting with sellers because I focus so much on buying.
Like finding them?
Not so much finding them, just actually connecting with them. You
know
what I mean? Because you have to have a different level of confidence when you talk to sellers. You have to have some sort of experience or at least some sort of script and know what to say. And it has to sound like you know what you're talking about. And again, sometimes we think about it too much and it causes us to fail. But that's my biggest obstacle, just kind of converting from being buyer focused to, implementing some seller leads into my pipeline.
Let me ask you this. I don't think we should have a coaching call now, but what do you think you would say to someone who was having that same issue with buyers? Because you're pretty good with buyers.
I would say just think about it as if you were a buyer. I kind of like resonate a lot of the people that I talk to on the buy side with my experience when I bought my first home. And everybody doesn't have that experience, of course, but I'm sure everybody would like to have that experience. So you got to just kind of just put yourself in their shoes too, you know what I mean? And then figuring out how to connect to them.
Right.
So I think that's like the biggest thing, is figuring out how to connect to them. Of course, with sellers in the market that we're in now, they got the advantage because of inventory. So you kind of got to figure out how you can bring value to them over the next agent. Everybody's calling them to get a listing, you know what I mean? So, but with buyers, it's just a matter of gaining their trust, you know what I mean? So you just got to trust yourself, and eventually they'll trust you too.
See, for me, I think it's definitely easier to get a buyer, but I think you could apply the same thing to a seller.
Okay.
So, yeah, let's talk about that. I think we come back in 6 months. I think this podcast, if you're a newer agent or someone starting out, definitely send this podcast to them. If you want to follow Prince, what's your Instagram, Prince? Is that the best place to reach you?
Yeah, at For Real Estate. So that's at the number 4 REAL 2_ estate. That's I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook as Prince Taheem. Feel free to follow me and connect with me anytime.
And if they want to send you referral business or something like that, what areas do you serve?
Oh, right now I service the Delaware area.
Okay. 100%. All right, great. So you heard it, guys. I really appreciate it if you've listened this far. And again, if you guys think of some ideas for us to talk about, we'd love to give you back some feedback. I think Prince comes back on in 6 months or a year, and we see if you hit that goal of 25 deals. I personally think you're going to hit 30, but I think there's going to be some sellers in there too.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait.
All right, stay tuned, everybody. Thanks a lot.